Major League Baseball opening day is less than 24 hours away. Well, kind of opening day. Opening day for 28 teams. And I'm going to talk about my predictions for the 2024 MLB season, from MVP choices to division winners to World Series champions. I'm going to run through them. That's what this Quick Thoughts episode is about. So, before I get into it, and it's this, I don't want this to be a long video, so I'm gonna kind of get to the meat and bones of it pretty quickly. I just want to say some of these are a little difficult to project just because injury timelines are so unknown, right? A perfect example is my New York Yankees. If Garrett Cole comes back 2 months into the season, which I hope he does, I'm expecting him to, and he plays out the rest of the season and pitches incredibly well, then the Yankees are in a good spot. If he is compromised or ends up needing Tommy John surgery, the Yankees probably don't make the playoffs. So it's all a little, you're projecting a little bit. You have to assume injuries in some capacity, and so that's what makes this a little tough. But nonetheless, I made predictions for the three major awards: MVP, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, and then the playoff predictions, division winning predictions, obviously, and then each side's championship series predictions and World Series as well. And I'll try to come back to this at the end of the year and see how accurate I was. I'll start with the individual honors. So for AL MVP, and maybe I'm a little biased, but I have Juan Soto, outfielder for the New York Yankees. And I mean, him and Judge top a lot of the rankings, followed by Corey Seager and several others. With Shohei Ohtani out of the AL, it makes it a little easier to project, but still, probably actually a little more difficult just because if Ohtani was pitching and hitting, then it would be a different story. But because he's only hitting anyway, I don't think he's got the best odds if he was still in the AL. But Mike Trout's still in Anaheim, one of the best players in the league when healthy. My microphone keeps dipping lower and lower. Hopefully that doesn't cause any audio issues for you. Tighten this. Obviously Aaron Judge is there, but at some point you have to expect Aaron Judge to go on a 10-day IL at least. And I think Juan Soto, because he's the new guy on the team, is going to get more buzz. Obviously you have guys like Yordan Alvarez in Houston, various other teams that could have guys that stand out and win that award. Obviously, Adley Rutschman for the Baltimore Orioles, I think, could be in heavy contention considering his positional value. But I'm going to go with Juan Soto here. I think he has a great year in his contract walk year and ends up putting, one of his best career years together and propels the Yankees to the playoffs, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then for my NL MVP, from Juan Soto's former team, I have Fernando Tatis Jr. And if you look at odds, he's about the fourth best. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman are all up there. And then you obviously have Ronald Acuna Jr. that's going to be in the conversation. But at the end of the day, I think Tatis Jr. is primed for a bounce back, and the Padres are not going to have high expectations. I think they're going to be an above 500 team still, even though they traded away Juan Soto. They added pieces, and I know they needed to cut payroll, but they still have good pitching throughout. I mean, I know they desperately needed pitching. They still got Joe Musgrove. They still got Yu Darvish. Now they have Michael King. I think that's a great 1-2-3. At the end of the day, I think Tatis has a really good year, and him being a very good defender in right field could definitely prop up his position in the MVP standings. Next up, Cy Young. AL Cy Young. I have the Baltimore Orioles, Corbin Burns. And I would have had Garrett Cole had he not gotten hurt. But even if he comes back in a month and a half, I think that's enough time to miss to be considered not going to win. I'm going to have to move this up. Hopefully this is not causing audio issues on the recording. And Corbin Burns is an ace. He's a Cy Young candidate year in and year out. And coming from the Milwaukee Brewers, where there's probably easier teams to face in the NL Central than there is in the AL East, I think he might struggle at the beginning. But he's the quality of pitcher that can figure it out towards the end of the year and really make a case for this Cy Young win. And if the Baltimore Orioles are a good team, they're going to need something out of him desperately because they didn't have an ace last year, and that's what kind of hurt him in the playoffs. He's an ace at the end of the day. And, you can make an argument for several other guys. I thought about putting Kevin Gausman here from the Toronto Blue Jays. I thought about putting Pablo Lopez from the Minnesota Twins, but I think Corbin Burns is just simply a better pitcher than those two. And if he has a representative season, I think he'll win the Cy Young. In the NL, I have Spencer Strider. And Spencer Strider is, for the Atlanta Braves, is one of the best pitchers in baseball. I don't think anyone would argue he's not a top 10 pitcher in baseball, but I think he's going to have an incredible year. And that's obviously something that's not a crazy prediction considering he's had an incredible year the past few years, but I think he's building and building, and I don't think we've seen the best of Spencer Strider's career. I think we could look back in 3 or 4 years and say Spencer Strider is probably still the best pitcher in baseball. When Garrett Cole and Corbin, the aforementioned Corbin Burns and guys like that kind of start to downtrend, and the older guys like Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, obviously out of the league, I think Spencer Strider could be the new cream of the crop in terms of ace starting pitching. And I think this will be his Cy Young season to prove that. And then rookie of the year odds, or choices. I debated a while between Evan Carter and Wyatt Langford, both for the Texas Rangers. I went with Evan Carter here, but you could make an argument for either one, frankly. Um, I think the best pure talent that could be a rookie is Jackson Holliday, but I don't think he ends up getting enough time this year to be really well considered for the award. So Evan Carter it is. I will say about Jackson Holliday, I think he probably could make the major league team and do really well this year. I think he's a phenomenal talent. He's one of the more pro-ready talents we've seen as a prospect in a long time. Uh, but I don't think they're going to give enough time to him, and so that's why I have Evan Carter, the Texas Rangers, who I think is going to have a big year. Texas Rangers coming off a World Series are going to rely on two rookies regularly, but I think that those two rookies, if you're going to rely on them, they're great ones to do. One a top prospect and one that showed himself in the playoffs last year, but still has rookie status. I think you feel good about both of those guys. And then the NL Rookie of the Year, listen, the popular pick is Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And while I think he is definitely worth the contract, and if I'm as a Yankees fan, I wish the Yankees could have gotten him at that contract or even a little bit more than that. At the end of the day, there's a thing with pitchers from Japan that they tend to have Tommy John surgery pretty early in their careers. We saw it with Shohei Ohtani. He's already had Tommy John surgery twice, I believe. Masahiro Tanaka didn't get Tommy John, but he nearly tore his UCL, a partial tear of the UCL when he came over from Japan. There's players after players, Japanese pitchers that come over that the feel of the baseball is different, and you just have concern around that. And so I hope he doesn't have Tommy John surgery, obviously, but if he misses a month of the season, I think that opens the door. And San Francisco, a guy like Jung Hoo Lee plays to that park, a guy who's got speed, who can hit the triples alley out there and really make a play for, kind of an old school baseball award given feel, where he's a guy who comes in from Korea and is your standard batting average, speed, moving well on the bases, high IQ baseball player, strong defense. He's not going to hit him out of the park, but in San Francisco, that's probably to his advantage. So and on top of that, San Francisco's spending big. They got Blake Snell to add to their starting rotation. They got Jorge Soler, also another power bat. I shouldn't say also a power bat to add to that lineup that desperately needed it. They got Matt Chapman as well in the infield, who certainly will add power to the lineup. I think Jung Hoo Lee could be in a position where he's getting on base for a lot of those guys and batting in, getting RBIs from a lot of those guys being on base. So that's my pick for Rookie of the Year. And then in terms of playoff position, let's start with the NL. The first seed I have the AL East, NL East winning Atlanta Braves at 103-59. And the Braves, backed by a strong season from NL Cy Young winner Spencer Strider. And obviously, I mean, that lineup is a machine, right? You have the infield, Matt Olson, Ozzie Albies, whoever you put at shortstop, I don't frankly care. And I'm blanking on Austin Riley. And then guys like Ronald Acuna in the outfield, right? Michael Harris, Marcell Ozuna. And then you got Travis d'Arnaud, who's rotating in at catcher with Sean Murphy. I mean, the lineup is deep. The lineup is incredible. And I know I missed a few guys in there who are notable contributors. So there's a lot of talent on that lineup. And if Spencer Strider can have a good year, if you can get what you can out of Charlie Morton, which I think is there's still production left in his arm, even though he's getting up there in age. Obviously, I mean, I haven't even mentioned Max Fried, who's probably a top 20 pitcher in baseball. If I had to, make a projection, the Atlanta Braves are going to be a really good baseball team. Second seed, I have the LA Dodgers at 98 and 64, which is probably a little bit of a disappointment, all things considered. I mean, they spent a lot of money this offseason, right? Bringing in Shohei Ohtani, bringing in Yoshinobu Yamamoto, bringing in Tyler Glass now. I mean, the list goes on, right? And while I think they're going to be a very good team, there's obviously injury concerns up and down that lineup, and your defense is something that I'm really questioning. I mean, you put Mookie Betts at shortstop when he's played limited time at second and nevertheless shortstop in the major leagues. He hasn't, I don't even think he's registered any innings at short in the major leagues until this year. And it's all because Gavin Lux is having throwing issues. So you move him over to second. And you can't put either one at DH because you have Shohei Ohtani there and you want to get more at bats for your outfielders. You don't really feel like you have an infielder that you could plug in. And then you got Max Muncy at third, who I think, honestly, his third base playing career should be behind him. Freddie Freeman is obviously a very good defender at first. I just don't love the defense. I think the pitching has a lot of injury concerns, obviously with the Yamamoto I mentioned, but Tyler Glass now has certainly not been healthy in his major league career. Dustin May coming back off injury, Walker Buehler coming back off injury. I think there's a lot of injury concern here, and that's why I have them a little bit lower than the Braves. I think they're really primed to be good for years to come, obviously, and dominant for years to come. But I think it takes a year to get everything going. Next year, you'll have Altani back in the rotation. You'll probably try to get Roki Sasaki, who's coming over from Japan as well. But this year, I think they're 2 seed in terms of, regular season standings. And then the 3 seed, the last division winner, the Central, I have the Chicago Cubs at 87 and 75. It's a little higher than I've seen most consensus rankings, but I believe in the Cubs' overall talent. Dansby Swanson, Cody Bellinger. I think they've got some good pitching in there. And I think the division's really bad. I think Milwaukee's going to take a step back. Their pitching has certainly gotten worse. Losing Corbin Burns and losing Brandon Woodruff's going to be out for the year. I believe they dealt Freddie Peralta. Or no, that's just a rumor that they're going to deal Freddie Peralta. Who knows if that happens. And then the other, I mean, you could argue Cincinnati has a chance here, but I just don't believe in their team until they prove it to me. Pittsburgh's obviously going to be bad. And then who am I missing? St. Louis, I think, can't get out of their own way, frankly. And I know they spent a lot on the rotation, but I just don't buy it. So I have Chicago taking a 3 seed. The 4th seed, the first wild card, I have the Philadelphia Phillies at 95 and 67. And I think they're the third best team in the NL pretty easily. They have a very talented lineup all the way through and through. Bryce Harper at first makes me a little nervous, but if you can hide a defender in a weird position, first base is the place to do that. Obviously, the top of the rotation is top notch, and you feel great about Nolan Wheeler going to a playoff series. I don't think I really need to. I mean, Trey Turner's going to have a better year this year. I don't think I really need to dive that much into it, but I think Philly's going to have a strong year. And then the 5th seed, I have San Francisco, 91 and 71. Like I already mentioned all their big additions. I think they're going to be a significantly better team than they were last year. And that division is going to be close, right? Arizona's stacking up. I don't even have Arizona making the playoffs, spoiler alert. And I made these rankings before they signed Jordan Montgomery. That'll certainly help. But it's going to be a tough division between the top 4, between the Dodgers, the Giants, the Diamondbacks, and the Padres. That's really tough. The Rockies might not reach 60 wins. So it's going to be a tough division for sure. And then my 6th seed, I have the San Diego Padres, which might shock some. I mean, Arizona went to the World Series last year, and I have them finishing 4th in their division. The Padres, I have at 85 and 77. And I think Arizona finishes a game or two behind that. The Padres, I think, are maligned for their talent level, but they really didn't tear down. They traded Juan Soto, who's, on a contract here, for a lot of pitching depth. And they moved some of that pitching depth for a top-end guy in Dylan Cease, who I didn't even mention earlier when I was mentioning Musgrove and Darvish, etc. So I think they have a real chance to be better than last year, even though the payroll is lower. And I think they got a lot of bad luck last year, frankly. If guys have bounce-back seasons, you could really feel good about the Padres, where they're at. And then in the AL, the 1st seed, I have the Houston Astros at 101 and 61. I don't think I really need to go into depth here. The Astros' concern has always been pitching depth, but they have top prospects that I think could make, make an impact. Struggling to speak now this year, and their lineup is just talented. Frankly, I don't know how they're going to retain all their pieces. I mean, I know they extended Jose Altuve, but Kyle Tucker's in a walk year. I believe Alex Bregman's in a walk year. That's for their offseason to figure out. But the lineup's tough. The pitching's very good. They keep developing relievers like no tomorrow. And I think they'll be the top team in the AL. And the second seed, and maybe this is a little high because I'm biased, but I have my New York Yankees at 99 and 63, winning the AL East. I think it's going to take a really strong year from Aaron Judge, a really strong year from Juan Soto, a really strong year from Giancarlo Stanton, and a very good year from Carlos Rodon. And the first two you probably feel good about if they're healthy. The second one, he's kind of a question mark in Stanton, whether he's going down or going up. But I feel good about his bounce back. And Carlos Rodon, I think, just needs to be a 3.5 ERA pitcher for them to have a really good year. And also, they need Garrett Cole to come back. And I'm projecting him to come back in this projection, obviously. And be the pitcher that he was last year and in years past. Third, I have the Minnesota Twins winning the Central at 88 and 74. I think they could end up being better than this, certainly. I think their pitching is underrated. I already mentioned Pablo Lopez. I think their lineup has some good pieces in it as well. We'll see how it all plays out at the end of the day. But the division is very bad, and someone's got to win it. So, frankly, that's all there is to it. The fourth seed, similar to the NL side, I have Baltimore at 97 and 65, and I think Baltimore's the third best team in the East, according to these projections. I think they're going to be right there for the division until the year end. They're going to get great contributions from their very talented prospect core. I mentioned Jackson Holiday. I'm not including him here, but I mean, Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson, the list goes on with their young talent that they've developed and they have on that lineup. And then the pitching, they've had guys that could really fill in to back end rotation spots and middle of the rotation spots. But now they got Nason Corbin Burns. They signed Craig Kimbrell to replace Diego Castillo, who had Tommy John. So I feel really good about their season. It's just a question of whether, one, the bats that you relied on that are young can continue to progress, and two, you can keep pieces in that bullpen healthy. The fifth seed, I had the Texas Rangers at 93 and 69. This might be a little bit of a lull from their World Series championship. I still think they're a really good team. And I think they're, I mean, obviously by record, the fourth best team in the AL. And I think they're in contention in the playoffs to really, make a strong push. I say this about every sport, but I believe the true definition of a superstar is a guy who has top end talent and elevates into the playoffs. And that's exactly what Corey Seager did last year to help them win the World Series. And I know they lost out on Jordan Montgomery in free agency. You still have Nathan Eovaldi. You hopefully have Jacob deGrom coming back. You hopefully have Max Scherzer coming back. You brought in Lorenzen, which I thought was a pretty good signing. I have to feel good about the Texas Rangers. And then my last playoff team, the Seattle Mariners at 89 and 73. I went back and forth. This could be the Mariners. This could be the Rays. This could be the Blue Jays. And I wouldn't be shocked at any of them. But I had the Seattle Mariners here. I think they're going to get very solid contributions from their pitching. It's one of the best pitching staffs in baseball, frankly. 1 through 5 is very talented. And then their lineup, they've made significant changes. Guys are going to be, brought in to make impacts here. Eugenio Suarez, certainly on the move. I'm going to pull up their lineup because I'm just like, I know they made more changes than I can remember. I remember off the top of my head, Polanco and Haniger. Let me see. So they've always got J.P. Crawford still at short, Julio Rodriguez in the outfield, Mitch Garver, that's right, they brought in. They obviously still have Ty France, Jorge Polanco, I mentioned, Cal Raleigh's still there. They've made solid additions all the way through, and I just feel really good about what their lineup is going to look like. They still got Taylor Trammell as an option in the outfield, Brian Anderson. Luis Urias is going to get at bats in the infield. You feel really good about where their team is. And if they get solid contribution from their lineup, which they didn't get last year, then they're going to be a very good team. And so I think that certainly improves over last year. They were a playoff team last year. So that's why I have them getting that 6th spot. And then in terms of the championship series, in the AL, I have Baltimore going against the Houston Astros, with the Astros pulling it out in 7. I think that's going to be a close series. I think it's going to come down to starting pitching, and I feel like the Houston Astros is better, frankly. And then the Dodgers versus the Braves on the other side are the two representatives that I have. And I'm going to say the Dodgers pull it out. I know it'll be a tough series, and I think the Braves probably on paper are better right now, but I think the Dodgers could certainly put it together as the year goes on, and they've got certainly better top-end talent, I think, in terms of the lineup, with Ohtani, with Betts, and with Freeman. And so my World Series pick, I have the LA Dodgers getting revenge on the Houston Astros for losing in 2017 for the cheating scandal. And I know I mentioned that despite me mentioning that the Dodgers might not have as good of a year now as they could have in the future, I still think they're going to end up getting a championship this year. I have a feeling they're going to get probably three in the next seven. Um, and I think that this will be one of them. I think this is a good year to strike before several key free agents are going to be available, and the talent in the league is certainly going to increase as years go on, which is why expansion is on the way in the MLB. So I'm going to have the Dodgers winning here, defeating the Houston Astros in six. I didn't say I had the Braves losing to the Dodgers in six as well. So Baltimore to Houston in seven, Braves to Dodgers in six, and then Astros to Dodgers in six in the World Series. So those are my predictions. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Who do you have winning the World Series, MVP, all that jazz? Let me know what your predictions are in the comments. I appreciate the support. Thanks for watching this Quick Thoughts episode. I hope you enjoyed. Peace out.